Check this out, guys. Being asked to get flood insurance when you're on the 10th floor of your condo building?
My family bought the condo, my grandparents, back in 1972. The building was originally built in 67. It was government housing. And in 72, it went to condos. So my family has owned it since then. And my wife and I were lucky enough in 2012 to be able to purchase this. And we want to use it for our retirement.
Storr is 5 years out from that dream retirement from 2 jobs in Indiana, but he says watching the increasing cost of living in Paradise is worrisome. Most recently, hearing from his property insurance company, Citizens, that he'll have to get flood insurance for the contents inside his condo on the 10th floor.
To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, paying for a product that I'll never need.
It's a new requirement passed in last year's second legislative special session on property insurance. Citizens told me in April that the goal of separate flood insurance is to help minimize any possible litigation of wind versus flood damage in future storms. But Storr is also on the association board of the condo building and says their costs are skyrocketing.
Insurance has killed us.
From 2021 to 2022, the building's flood coverage went from $97,000 to $110,000, a 14% increase. And their property insurance went from $106,000 to $187,000, a 77% increase.
I mean, it bears repeating. Flood insurance on the 10th floor, this pretty much sums up the problems with owning condos and the homeowners associations that come with it. Am I right, guys? Now, when I asked my friends about this, they told me about the 2 steps in getting a good condo. Step 1, don't buy a condo. Step 2, never buy into an HOA. And that's all you need to know. That's what they told me. So, sometimes it's not only the HOA fees, but it's also the bullying by the HOA management and basically making your life a living. They make your life very difficult. But hey, every person's condo experience is different, right? So let's take a look at condos and how HOAs got all this power. So starting with this one. So homeowner slams HOA over their alleged illegal parking policy. Lawsuits will be filed. Now this is about HOA that governs the Decatur condominium in Colorado. Now apparently they recently took it upon themselves to ban electric vehicles from its parking garage. According to the outlet, residents received an email that said electric vehicles could no longer park or charge in the facility due to concerns about increased fire risks with electric vehicles in the garage. Now, the problem? Well, water supposedly won't extinguish a battery fire, so their sprinkler systems would essentially be useless, and that the design of the garage wouldn't allow firefighters to address the situation effectively. Now, I get it. They're trying to protect their own investment, the residents, but this makes these electric vehicles sound incredibly dangerous. Now, this obviously became a problem for residents with electric vehicles because where else are they going to park, right? Especially since outdoor parking near the condo is supposedly often full. So basically the ban would basically prevent them from even being able to drive their EVs. So people would have to buy gas-powered vehicles, right? But the next part is where it gets really interesting. Now, while the HOA claimed that the ban was based on advice from the fire marshal, the fire department themselves confirmed that they gave no such recommendation. So who made this up? They just mentioned something about installing charging stations being up to the fire code. Bottom line, they really don't have the guidance nor authority otherwise about the use of parking of electric vehicles, meaning the decision to bar EVs from the garage comes entirely from the HOA. Now, they definitely got an earful when this was posted on the r/Colorado subreddit. People talked about lawsuits from the homeowners and maybe even lawsuits from the EV industry. You see, Decatur's HOA isn't the first to try to block eco-friendly choices by residents. One Maryland HOA tried to force a couple to remove their native wildflowers, while others have objected to homeowners installing solar panels. Now, I think the real problem is that many HOA boards are just a handful of owners who are elected by the other owners, and they think that they know what they're doing. But many of these guys and girls don't. And a lot of them, they get off on this power trip and they just want to try to run everybody's lives. And then they get ideas which they believe make sense. And then they go ahead and turn these ideas into new rules, completely oblivious to the consequences. Now, some HOA boards, they pay a management company to help them out. They even have a rep attend their board meetings, and that rep is involved in the discussions. Now, the advantage is that they don't make any new rules without the management rep, who, by the way, has a lot of experience seeing what works and what doesn't, and they give advice, right? But sometimes there's a lot of supposedly good ideas, but then they end up translating to terrible rules. So those ideas, they get scrapped and they never become rules. It works well for some, but then again, different experiences with different HOAs, I'd love to hear from you guys. But some, they're retired doctors, lawyers, ex-college professors, etc. So you may not be exactly in touch with the problems of a working class American. Now, I heard from a buddy of mine, their HOA, it was nothing for them to spend $250,000 fixing the shoreline of the pond or replacing concrete that was fine. They just waste money. And then they went ahead and slapped everybody with a special assessment of $1,500. The homeowners, they feel like they're dealing with miniature politicians, so the ones that's left, they're glad they're out of there. And all those insurance costs being charged for flood insurance when you live on the 10th floor, some, their regular insurance increased 75% when they were budgeted 25%. So the whole thing is blowing HOA budgets out of the water. After the Surfside, Colorado collapse in 2021, where nearly 100 people died, Florida lawmakers passed Senate Bill 4D requiring milestone inspections for condominiums and for each association to have enough reserves to make any necessary repairs that may be found during the inspection. So homeowners are like, oh my God, how are we going to pay for this stuff? So they end up raising HOA fees and whatever else that they can scrape up. And this is probably why Florida lawmakers passed a revision to the original Citizens Property Insurance flood mandate, excluding condominium units. Now, still waiting for the governor's signature, but what would happen if the mandate does change and new customers have already been mandated to get flood coverage since April 1st as a part of the phased-in approach to the mandate? Now, according to the National Flood Insurance Program, policyholders can get a refund if they request to cancel within the 30-day waiting period before the policy goes into effect. But the NFP only allows midterm cancellations if a lender no longer requires flood insurance. But still, they advise anyone within the state of Florida, in a high-rise or not, to have flood insurance. They also recommend that condo owners talk to their insurance agent to see what options they have. You could check floodsmart.gov or the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation website for more information about flood insurance and to find flood insurance providers. And take note, guys, there may actually be a waiting period just to obtain flood insurance. Another thing they really don't talk about, rising property taxes. In 2008, the association dues went up tremendously due to vacancies, followed by property taxes. Some people own their condos outright, paid cash, paid off the mortgages, and between dues and taxes, they couldn't afford to retire. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Some of these condo HOA dues are like $2,000 a month, depending upon where you live. But yeah, HOAs really need to be talked about. Now, some people call them an unnecessary, necessary evil. All over the internet, you can find stories about people getting fined for parking their vehicles in their own driveways, or having a potted tomato plant on their back porch, or leaving a bottle of Gatorade out for one day. I know one story, this guy came back from vacation only to discover that his car was missing. He thought it was stolen, but apparently his HOA had it towed because it had a flat tire. A Maryland HOA fined a homeowner $40,000 because the fence she built was 8 inches too long. A Missouri HOA threatened a family with, get this guys, jail time because they put up a play set that was purple. Yeah, purple. But let me tell you guys, these private governing bodies called common interest communities, they're becoming an absolute inevitability of home ownership in America. According to a report by the Foundation of Community Association Research, a whopping 73.9 million Americans, that is more than a quarter of the population, live under the rule of these HOA associations. And get this, over 75% of newly built housing for sale is a part of a community association. And so this means if you own a home in the United States today, there's a 1 in 4 chance that you're under the watchful eye of an HOA. I mean, some people call the HOAs neighborhood overlords. Now, don't get me wrong, not all HOAs are evil. It really does make sense to have some kind of general rules and guidelines whenever we're all living so close together. I mean, I don't necessarily want my neighbor painting her house purple or red or, some wild color like that affecting my own personal property value. So I get it to some extent. But let's face it, guys, their setup can be a little bit suboptimal, to say the least. Now, HOAs claim to exist for community well-being, but in reality, it boils down to preserving property values and making developers rich in the process. Some have even had a history of being discriminatory and even exclusionary. Think of these HOAs as micro-sized, super local governments that are basically practically given a free pass by the actual government. And so that's basically granting these people an unchecked power that's like privatization on hyperdrive. We're talking about private governments doing everything the traditional local governments do. And the scariest part, it's unregulated, guys, meaning they're completely unchecked. You remember the Reagan era idea that the market would solve all of our problems? Well, it turns out it's not that simple. It might work out for some lucky people, but for others, it's a complete disaster. Really, it's a win-win situation for the real estate developers and cities. Picture this. Developer approaches a cash-strapped city with an enticing proposal. They offer to build a new subdivision, complete with private streets, a pool, a sewer system, and other, nice amenities that attract the buyer. Maybe basketball courts or tennis courts, whatnot. And who ends up paying for all of this? Well, it's the homeowners, of course, through fees and dues. The city loves this deal because it saves them all the headache of having to build streets and managing pools. Basically, real estate developers in cities see dollar signs with private governments that they really don't even have to worry about. More houses on less land, putting these houses like extra close together. And not to mention, cities get a whole bunch of new taxpayers paying full property tax without even having to provide the same services that they provide to everybody else. And the deal is sold to homeowners as a good thing too. They get some semblance of order in their community, knowing that their neighbor won't be blasting music at 3 a.m., which I appreciate that. And they gain access to amenities like private pools. Plus, living in an HOA governed property supposedly boosts your home's value. According to a 2019 study, houses in these subdivisions are worth at least 4% more than similar houses outside of them. Sounds like a win, right? Maybe. But what they really don't tell you about is the catch that it comes with. Apparently, most of that increased value is pocketed by the developer. And over time, as properties age and ownership changes, the extra value slowly but surely fades away. So what's the main function of an HOA? Well, it's all about maintaining that precious property value. And how do they do it? By enforcing all sorts of rules, regulations, and restrictions. The underlying theory is that sticking to the original plan and keeping everything the same is the best way to preserve property values. And that is why the houses have to be some shade of beige. The curtains have to be visible from the street. The mailboxes have to be a certain color. The lawns have to be maintained and watered and weed treated. All in the name of protecting property values. And the big issue with HOAs is that if you have a problem with them or they've got a problem with you, it can be quite the headache. Association rules aren't just little kind suggestions. They're enforced through fines and liens on your property in extreme cases, even foreclosure on people's properties. And if you want to fight back against your HOA, it might be out of luck. Looks can be deceiving, guys. Don't just fall for low maintenance fees when buying a condo. Dig deeper and find out what you're really getting for your money. Is the association taking care of essential maintenance or are they cutting corners? It's really important to know that. Also, the size of the complex doesn't determine whether or not it's better or worse. It's all about efficiency and hands-on management. And if you're already living in a condo, get involved, guys. Attend association meetings, request documents to see where your money's really going, and question the expenses. It is your right as an owner. If you guys made it this far in the video, do your boy a favor, drop a quick like. I would totally appreciate that. Also, consider subscribing to the channel. By the way, if you already own a home, get your free home warranty quote. There's a link in the description down below this video. Really appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.